This is Project Blue, available now on Nintendo Switch, the NES, Microsoft Xbox One, Series S, Series X, and on PC through itch.io. The game starts out with this opening cutscene, and the basic gist of it is that you are a test subject named Blue, and you're attempting to escape from a bioweapons lab. I am playing the Xbox version here through a Series S, and right away you're just kind of thrown right into it. It is a platformer with gun mechanics, I think similar to like a Mega Man style game, where you just move around and you jump and shoot. There's little symbols that you collect that are your currency. They are similar to the Mario Brothers series in that they're just used for 1-ups when you collect 100 of them. You have hearts for your health, which you can find some upgrades for to have more. You have 3 lives, and then if you get a game over, you can continue on. And the basis of the game is that you're just moving from screen to screen, and there's different areas and environments that you'll encounter throughout your journey. There's enemies that you can eliminate. Sometimes they'll drop a coin. There's little heart pickups that will replenish your health. And since you're trying to escape this lab, you're just moving in a mostly linear path, but there are some secrets and paths to uncover. There are 3 different borders if you would like to change the outside, since it is in the 4:3 aspect ratio. There's also a really nice scan of the manual. It's an NES style manual, so you can learn more information about the story, the controls, any of that sort of stuff. And also, the game does have 3 different difficulties. I am playing on the normal difficulty. I would consider this game to be a little bit on the higher end in terms of difficulty, so I think probably most players are going to play on normal. But there are harder options if you are a NES platformer savant. And the good aspects of the game are the level design. The gunplay feels real nice, and that's the main 2 things that I really liked. It has some really great pixel art, but the level design is where the game really shines. But for me personally, what hinders that a little bit is that the controls just feel a little off. And what I mean by that is it feels a little bit slippery, a little bit floaty, almost like there's a little bit of a delay in your movements. And the best way I could kind of describe that, as it's hard to see through video, is that in Mario Brothers 3, you have momentum-based movement, right? So in order to fly, you need to first gain momentum. It's the same kind of concept here, where you could jump a little higher if you have some momentum, but it doesn't quite feel as good as Mario 3 does, and I found myself really kind of struggling with this. And later on in the game is when I really started to feel it punishing me, as I was dying consistently on one-hit death traps like spikes, pits, all that sort of stuff that you would typically find in a platformer like this. It has a various amount of bosses. There's a couple mini bosses. There's a good variety of enemies that you encounter. So there is a lot of depth to the gameplay in terms of the level design, the enemy design, all that sort of stuff. But the core gameplay of it is very basic, as in you don't really get any sort of permanent upgrades. You don't get a double jump or anything like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The game was designed around that. But just be aware that although it probably kind of looks like a Metroidvania, it's definitely not. It's more of a linear progression platformer / shoot 'em up shooter, I guess. But yeah, so I guess that's the main things that I really like about the game. And like I said, what I don't like about the game is the checkpoints in the game. There are checkpoints, but it's never clear where you trigger these checkpoints. And even if there was a piece of the environment that when you entered that room was kind of like a signifier that that was a room that you would continue from, that would have been nice. It's just, you won't know where you're going to start until you get a game over. And you will get a game over because the game is not easy. So make sure that you enjoy these harder types of games if you do plan on playing this one. A casual player will probably be able to play through it, but just like I said about the controls and the difficulty, that it is on the higher side. And one of the other things that kind of really frustrated me is I don't mind replaying certain sections of the game. Like, I understand you're not going to have a checkpoint every single room in this style of game, but there's times where the checkpoints seem to be in very awkward positions, and sometimes you might even start from a checkpoint right in front of an enemy, and the enemy might not be in a position where they're going to hit you if you stand where you spawn, but still very weird to spawn in a room with an enemy right in front of you shooting at you right away. And then also having to replay large chunks because there's a difficult room very later throughout a section, I also found that to be frustrating. But these gripes aside, I overall did enjoy the game. It was a lot of fun to go through and see these different environments and kind of figure out the rooms. Some rooms, like, you might enter it and it's kind of like one of those timed situations where maybe you have some enemies coming at you, or maybe there's like some projectiles coming from the ceiling or a gun shooting at you a certain way, and the best way to get through the room is to just go as soon as you enter it. So kind of figuring out the nuances of every single room kind of shows the amount of care and detail that went into designing the game as a whole. But other than that, as I went through, the further I got, kind of the more frustrated I got. There was more one-hit death pits, and just the checkpoint placement seemed a little off. And then also the other thing that kind of increased the difficulty when you have death is that you only start with 2 hearts, which means you can take 2 hits. It seemed a little weird because if you have 5 hearts like I do here, why don't you spawn in with 3? I'm not sure why the choice on the normal difficulty was 2. Why wasn't it full health? So certain little design choices did kind of perplex me a little bit, but they're just minor annoyances in an overall enjoyable experience. So if you are a fan of harder NES style platformers and run and gun type games, I definitely recommend giving this a play. It's available in a lot of different forms. You're not just restricted to it playing it since it's an NES game on the NES, which is really nice, and I appreciate that 8-Bit Legit does port these games over to modern platforms because it's a lot more accessible that way. So give it a look. It's a really fun game. If you like this review, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you on my next video. Thanks for watching.